Hello, thank you for joining me. My name is Ben. I'm a supervisor up here at the Isley branch, but for our purposes today, most importantly, I am a cartoonist. I've named this program, Making Comics, The Basics. And I wanted to do that because we're making it super clear that anyone can make a comic. Even if you, quote, can't draw, which I've got opinions about that we're going to talk about, or you don't have any fancy tools or anything, I don't care about that either. Could have just a piece of charcoal and a napkin. As long as you can scribble something out, that counts. You ever get tired of having to just use so many words to describe something? Get tired of describing how funky some glasses are? Well, just draw those puppies. They got frogs on top. That's what makes them funky. So, to be a little more serious, there is some really weird stuff that a comic does to your brain while you read it. These strange little cooperations between your eyes and your mind. So, look at this comic here. Let's talk about what's going on with these panels. So, right off the bat, as you look at it, your brain sort of automatically puts them in the right order based on how you're used to just reading words on a page. Kind of goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? That's pretty obvious, but a little bit less obvious thing is a little trick that your brain does to get a sense of time when it looks at a comic. So you'll see each of these panels are the same size except for this one. This big one here seems to represent a longer moment, right? It's got more space to it. That's not really anything, I don't have any time signatures in here. That's just something you kind of naturally understand when you see a bigger panel like this. Third thing, and this is the weirdest thing, this will break your brain if you think too hard about this. There are all these little transitions and odd things that happen that your brain just kind of puts together on its own. So when we talk about jumping from panel to panel, you just kind of fill in the blanks between this guy and this guy. He goes from here to here. Now, I didn't draw any of this. I just drew this and I drew this. Everything else you filled in with your special mind. That's one of the coolest things about comics, is it's a really participatory thing for a reader to take part in. You use a lot of your brain's pattern recognition. You interpret motion, you mark time. You can sort of understand little shorthand things. You kind of know, all right, there's these little marks, like, I don't have marks around my head right now, but you kind of see that, and that your brain interprets that as someone kind of being surprised, like, oh, you imagine fingers going out. But again, all I have to do as an artist is just make little marks on the page right there. Let's talk about the basic pieces of a comic. I'm going to very gingerly rip this off. Hopefully I don't hurt too bad. Nice. Got number 1. We got panels. Those are the boxes that you see in that comic back there. Sometimes in some bigger, more expensive comics, panels can be all crazy shapes and sizes, or they might even just leave panels off altogether and have it just kind of bleeding all over the page. They're just like big landscape shots. We're not going to worry too much about that here because we're trying to keep it simple. The main thing I want you to do with panels is keep it to like 3 or 4. If you're just doing a little strip. And while we're talking about that, a nice trick to do if you're having trouble with coming up with an idea for something, just make a couple panels before you've even thought of the first thing. That way, you're not just staring at a blank page. And then, I mean, if nothing comes up, just, I don't know, put some nonsense in there. Draw some cats. Cats are great, right? More cats. Always more cats. And again, maybe this cat's telling a great joke. I don't know yet. I think we're going to make a comic right here, and it should be an amazing joke. What joke are we going to do? I've got it. Why did the orange go to the doctor? Because he wasn't peeling well. The setup, the response, and then the punchline, right? That's 3-panel thing. The other thing with panels, you see the space in here? That is what's called a gutter. These are sort of the unsung heroes of comics. This little empty space between here where a lot actually happens. Some comics don't include them. It's not 100% necessary, but it's something that I recommend because it really helps with readability. So, for instance, I think Dogman doesn't use gutters, they just do straight lines, which is fine. Dogman is fantastic. But if you're just kind of scribbling out some comics, this will really help people understand what you're doing. Because at its most basic, a gutter just gives a little bit of space between each panel. Helps you distinguish between them so they don't just run together. There are other kind of more mind-bendy things that happen in a gutter, though. It sort of gives your reader's eye a chance to reset for like just a split second, kind of process what it just saw, this first cat, you know, and kind of resolve any actions that it might be seeing. If we look back here, the gutter is kind of the main area where you kind of put that action in. You know, Scott McCloud always talks about the gutter is where most of the comic actually happens, because you kind of go from somebody primed with a baseball bat to already having swung the bat in the next panel. Well, you can kind of think of that bat swing as happening right in there. That's kind of your imagination zone. Okay, so those are panels. Word balloons. A really simple word balloon. It's just kind of an oval with a little tail, right? You've seen this everywhere. Lots of people like to do different shapes. Sometimes you'll see, you know, oval with kind of a one-line tail, or you might see, like, if you read a lot of Garfield. Garfield is not actually talking out loud. He's just got thoughts in his head. And again, somehow everyone can hear his thoughts. All of the things that Garfield kind of quote-unquote says are in the word bubble's cousin, the thought bubble. This is kind of a shorthand for something that's just going on in a character's mind. You see kind of a narrative box like this. This is something that, like, maybe you've got a narrator in your comic, or maybe it's somebody having a flashback and they're talking about something that happened in the past. So for instance, I made sure to kind of include a couple different ones here. You know, a lot of it you'll see like, meanwhile, ... That's my favorite little thing, meanwhile. I love it. I love seeing meanwhile in comics. I don't know, it just makes me happy. You do what makes you happy. So there's two little tricks with word balloons. You want to kind of keep, so here's your words, your very legible words. If you can't see what I'm writing, they're actually scribbles, they're not real words. Pretend they're words. You want to kind of leave plenty of space around your words. You don't want to crowd them out. This helps, one, with making the words themselves more readable, but it also keeps kind of the rest of your panel from crowding in on your words too much. Again, it's a readability thing. A lot of what we're doing with these basics is just to make it readable. And that's a lot of things that I see with, like when someone is just kind of making comics for the first time, is they don't quite have these little tricks that make it just easy to understand. Another readability thing is going to be how you kind of point the little tail of the word balloon. So, got a guy saying something. It doesn't make a ton of sense. You know, and I see this mistake happen a lot. You got him saying something, but it's just kind of pointing at the top of his head. You can understand this, but look how much more sense this makes if you've got it pointing at his mouth. That just makes it so much clearer that like this is something that like popping out of a character's mouth. You don't want to crowd it too much because word balloons can have this weird thing. If you crowd something out too much, the word balloon starts to take on kind of a physical form, and that is not a bridge you want to cross. Word balloons occupy this like non-physical space in a panel. They're nothing that a character can see. Only we as the reader can see it. Same deal with the borders of the panel. And I know some more talented cartoonists can kind of mess with word balloons a little bit. You might see a character just like the whole comic, they ignore the word balloons, then like on the last page, they'll just like grab one and pull it out of the sky, and you realize like they've been seeing these word balloons this whole time. Twist. Let's make that comic we were talking about. When you go to start on a comic, start with a pencil, ideally with an eraser. You make your panels, and then if you decide you don't like them, you can just erase and start again. We're gonna do a 3-panel grid. If I was being really picky, I would get out like a T-square or a ruler or something, if I wanted them to be even. So once you do that, then you can start filling in. A lot of people do different things. They kind of take a different approach for how they want to fill in a panel. Since I know ahead of time, we're doing that joke we did, why the orange go to the doctor. Why? Because it wasn't peeling well. So, since I already know what that's going to be, I know I'm not going to change it around too much. I'm just going to fill in the tops because I kind of know where the word balloons are going to go. So, why did the orange go to the doctor? Something I'm kind of trying to do is keeping it justified kind of in the center, leaving plenty of room. Don't crowd them up too much. And this is again, this just kind of comes from practice. You space your words so that you kind of know they're going to fill out about the middle part. Again, that's a little tricky thing. If it doesn't come out right, that's okay. You can always just make it again. Then the response, why? That's a question mark. That's a question mark, okay. Because well, see, now I've got a conundrum. Wasn't isn't really going to fit there, but I'm going to say he was not peeling well. For emphasis, you make it really big. Now that we've done that, I'm going to pencil in some characters. Again, we're keeping it simple. A cat is telling this joke. And then, let's say it's just me listening to it. I tend to be the foil in all of my comics, just because I find myself kind of boring. So it's good for like if you have a funny cat. I don't know, not too precious because this is a video. Since I also know and this is something you'll see in a lot of newspapers too. These two are just having a little conversation, so it's not necessarily necessary to have them moving around or anything like that. So I'm just going to show them from these two angles. And I think as I'm doing this, I'm getting an idea for the last panel though. I want to do a classic cartoon gag. I don't even remember the origin of this, it's so old. We're going to do a plop. That is where a character gets a punchline. It is so unbelievable to them that they physically cannot stand. They fall onto their back. And you know what sound that makes? Plop. It's incredible. The way you illustrate a plop, suddenly you only see the character's feet. You draw a little motion line, and then you write plop. Very simple, very effective. Like a knife, it cuts. So, I think now that we have, oh, you know what, word balloons. We're gonna kind of give plenty of space around, point it at the cat. Again, if it's kind of far, you don't have to be too picky. Make sure they kind of suggest where they're pointing. Who's not peeling well? A classic. For a little sound effect, you don't really need to include anything around it. That's also what differentiates it from a word balloon. It's just a little sound effect. Plop. Beautiful. I love the sound. Now that we've got this penciled out, now we're on to the inking phase. All right. That is more or less where you just kind of trace over what you just did with a marker or a pen. You usually want to try to use a black one, but again, it could be fun, it could be purple. There's nothing wrong with a purple comic. I usually like to do the panels first. Again, that's just kind of personal pickiness, but that helps you understand how your comic is going to look. And also because sometimes you might draw something and then realize that once you ink over the panel border, like, oh, you kind of covered it up a little bit. So this way you can understand your own boundaries a little bit. After you do that, kind of give it a chance to dry. Again, this depends on what kind of marker or pen you're using. If you got something really quick drying, you don't have to worry about it so much. But if you've got like a Sharpie or even like a brush or something like that, if you start to then draw on here, your hand is just going to smear it all over, which is annoying. So try not to do it. This is a huge marker, so it's probably not going to be the most legible. Why did the orange go to the doctor? Kind of finish out the word balloon. When you ink, it's kind of your chance to correct little things you made. I'm sort of realizing this word balloon should be a little bit bigger, and it's okay to kind of tuck it behind the panel sometimes. You might also see a word balloon like pop out of a panel. Again, that's fine. Then we're gonna ink these two guys, keeping it simple. He's looking less like a cat as I ink him, but that's okay. Here's me. An impeccable likeness. Doo-doo. When you make a comic, sometimes it's nice to show it to somebody, but you really don't have to. You can just make it for yourself and tuck it away somewhere, or put it on your wall, whatever you want to do. Gonna finish this out. another fun thing about making comics, if you're making a really big one, you will end up drawing the same thing over and over and over again. So you'll either get really good at drawing your characters, or you'll just learn to just really hate it and you never want to draw them again. Because he was not peeling. I'm going to change to uppercase. Uh-oh, but then I ran out of space. Well, we'll just throw it down here. Peeling well. And then I'm going to add some exclamation points to make it fit better. Little trade secret. Just always add exclamation points to fill it out. All right. Fill it up here. Kind of tuck it behind the panel. There's only one L in well. Well, there we go. See, even I make mistakes, and I'm a professional. And then we gotta do the cat. And then my favorite part, the plot. Little motion lines, little plot. So there's a comic. Usually, and I think this ink seems pretty fast drying. The next thing you can do is get your eraser back out and just kind of erase your pencil lines. I'll leave you with this. When you talk about good drawing, craft, it helps, but it's not necessary. When you look at a comic, say like Dogman or Captain Underpants, those drawings are really, really simple. But that's because the point of Dogman is to tell the story of Dogman. You can still tell a story, you can make something anywhere in your skill level. You can get better if you want to, but I don't think you have to. On that serious note, why did the orange go to the doctor? Why? Because he wasn't peeling well. Wow. So I really want to tell you, I appreciate you tuning in. I know these are some really strange circumstances for the library and the community. But let's talk about summer reading. It's still happening. You can go and sign up for it until July 31st. You could go, say it's July 30, you can just hop in there and log in all your minutes for the past 2 months, if that's what it takes. I want you to go to lincolnlibraries.org. You can follow links there to sign up. You can, if you did summer reading programs last year, years before, we're still using Beanstack. That same app on your phone, just hop in there and sign up for the new program. I want you to log your minutes, get some nice coupons, maybe get some drawings. And when you're logging minutes, everything counts, even comics. Thanks for joining me today.